But we talk to the chief first Tuesday of every month, and we appreciate Chief Ryan O'Hara from the Minneapolis Police Department joining us on this election day. Let's start there, Chief, with election day. This is a divided country.
Yeah.
Passions are running high, and what is your department? I guess how is today different than a normal day for you? And how closely are you paying attention to polling places in
Sure.
the city? Take us through that.
Yeah, so we have additional staffing through the night tonight, and we have additional people on call. While the polls are open, we've issued guidance and reminders to our officers if we do have to respond to check in with the head election judge at the polling site. We're only going to intervene if there's clearly an issue of life safety or property damage, and so on. But the real concern that we have is, tonight and what seems like it might be in the days ahead, as people, wait to see what the results are and different things that happen. And it's certainly concerning just because of, kind of the heightened state that everybody's in. And the country's clearly divided. And obviously, we have kind of a microcosm of that here. And so, we will be monitoring this for the next several days just to ensure that people are safe.
Any problems so far?
No problem so far. We're in communication with all of our law enforcement partners and with other, major cities, particularly those that are in swing states, just to monitor what's happening there, because we're concerned, something happening with a vote count someplace else might be reason for, people to act out here.
Before we get to local news, the FBI has reported more than 2,000 threats to election workers. Do we have any threats here that you know about that you're actively looking at?
There was one issue I'm aware of from the BCA previously. There's nothing active from today. Yeah.
Did you vote?
I have not voted today.
Who are you voting for? Come on,
I got at least one person letting me know that they voted for me for president.
That's right, they voted in Ryan O'Hara.
So who knows what'll happen with the results today.
Love it.
It's been a tough couple of weeks with the shooting that happened of the neighbor and the calls, the reporting revealing that police have been called several times on this individual. I guess for people listening, Chief, who say, can I be confident in the Minneapolis Police Department if a neighbor, if a spouse, if a stranger is harassing me and I call police and want something to be done, will they do something about it? What do you say to those people who now have doubts because of what happened there?
Yeah. So first off, I know people from the community have many questions about what happened, as do I. I've personally been involved in this now since the shooting, and I'm still learning about things that happened and details over the course of more than a year. But I will say, one thing that is clear is that we didn't do enough to prevent Mr. Maturi from being shot. And so that is a failure on our part. But what is not clear is what else the police could have done or should have done differently. As everybody knows, we responded probably 24 times to 911 calls there. And in addition, one of our lieutenants specifically responded himself over 24 times, in addition to other efforts that were made to arrest this person. And there were efforts made previously to try and get bias crime charges approved against Mr. Sawchek. And
what happened to that?
Those charges were declined because they could not be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's clear that a lot of work was done, but it's not clear what exactly should have been done differently.
But what could have helped? Like, is that a response by the city, or is that a response by the prosecutor?
I do think it is a systems failure, and I do think clearly the police bear the brunt of it because we're the most visible part. But I know individual officers that responded there multiple times were frustrated. It's very disheartening for police officers to go to a repeated address over and over and over again and feel like they're not able to solve the problem. Why
were they frustrated? Frustrated with what? That they couldn't prove that it was a hate crime? They couldn't prove harassment?
That they couldn't resolve the situation. And it's also not clear if we did arrest this individual earlier, if he would have even been held. And if that would have prevented, what happened. So, I think there was a whole lot of effort into this. It's not clear, still, it's not clear what should have been done differently. But in response to the calls for, that we should have arrested this person, immediately after the shooting, the police did not respond to the scene when the shooting happened because people didn't know that Mr. Maturi was actually shot. We got the call at the hospital after the fact. So it was a different situation. And we did have the house surrounded for a couple of days waiting for this guy to come out, which he didn't do. And we followed MDHR requirements, and we used behavioral threat assessment team, we used psychiatrists, we used family members to do everything we could to try and separate this individual from his guns and safely take him into custody. In the end, it did escalate to the point where we had to use force and we had to go in with a SWAT team, and we were prepared to use gas to try and get him out of the house. But the number one priority has been and continues to be, to try and resolve these things peacefully.
You've heard the criticisms of people saying, okay, this is a white guy, hold up here. If this would have been an African-American gentleman, it would have been much different. It would have been handled. What do you say to that?
Well, that just doesn't match the reality of today. You can look on our Facebook page at different, instances where our officers have confronted black suspects armed, pointing a gun at police officers, pointing it at other folks. And thank God they were able to de-escalate and resolve the situation peacefully. And just over the weekend, we had another incident where a person who was mentally ill that a family member reported was armed. They were able to de-escalate, use additional resources, take additional time and safely take the person into custody. So, I think it's important, kind of as heightened as everybody has been, as hurt as everybody is here, to deal with facts as we try and improve. And the reality is today, I'm deeply concerned about the men and women of this police department. This police department is severely understaffed. It's about 50 cops short of even when I got here. And just the fact of the matter is there's a number of different units that used to exist that don't exist anymore. So we have cops that are performing multiple functions every day. They are overworked. They are tired. But they have fought through all of the negativity. And I need to be, as the police chief, I need to stand up for them and let people know there's more Jamal Mitchells here today by far than there are Derek Chauvins. And we're getting an incredible amount of young people that want to come on this job. 40% of our applicants today are African American. And there's an incredible amount of young people from the community that want to be a part of this. And they need to be supported and they need to be loved because they have everything working against them to come on this job. And it's very easy to sit back and hide behind a computer and throw stones and tear stuff down. I'm here because we're trying to build something and build the police department that the community here wants.
I often hear criticism from the pro-gun people that say, oh, we got to address the mental health issue. We got to address the mental health issue. And I agree. We of course, we need to address the mental health issue. But in this case, I just want to harken back to the shooting for a minute. This person was known to have, the shooter, mental health issues. He was also known to have guns. Do we have red flag laws that work in this state that were either not employed in this case? Or where do the red flag laws, like for your jurisdiction, what can the cops do if they know there's somebody who's mentally ill, who's holed up with a bunch of guns? Like what can we do?
I don't know at what point for sure, there was a sufficient evidence to prove that there was a weapon inside. I don't know when that happened. I do know that this individual was civilly committed in the past. So this isn't a surprise for the rest of the system. So what happened there? And why was this person with this history being civilly committed allowed to be out in the community? And I do know, the officers did involve social workers and other folks along the way. And I don't know what barriers they had to trying to resolve the situation. So, I'm thankful we're going to have this independent review. We're looking at things internally as well. But I think the end goal as we reform and try and rebuild this department is we need to be a learning organization. We need to be able to look at look at what's going right and what's going wrong, make adjustments as we move forward. And we need people to understand that, there's no way we can go from a police department that had 900 officers to 500 and at the same time have far more serious crime and all of these other issues, and think that there isn't going to be problems. There isn't going to be stuff falling through the cracks. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying as best as possible to correct problems as they pop up. But we are constantly triaging issues. And as the police chief, it pains me because I know we are not meeting people's expectation every day. But that does not mean that the cops are not working hard and fighting through this and trying to do everything that they can to address a lot of these issues. But it means we got a whole lot of work to do.
A lot of work to do, and yes, the criticisms are fair. You've addressed that, and the failures here. But when we talked to Councilmember Latricia Vital last week, she said that she had reached out to you personally, but she was critical of her colleagues who write a letter and say this letter stands, and we've got other groups, calling for your resignation, calling for you to be fired. Can you just obviously you're not a fan of of calls like that. Can you just comment though, like how that muddies the water into actually coming up with let's find out what went wrong here.
Yes.
Change it.
Well, I mean, calling for people to be fired doesn't fix any problems. And I was hired here to try and fix a whole lot of problems with very, very limited resources. And I'm thankful, I work for the mayor. The mayor has made clear privately and publicly that that's not happening. So I'm thankful for that because we got a whole lot of work to do. But I am yet again concerned about how heated a lot of the negative rhetoric is without any facts. Because if we are committed to trying to give the communities of this city the police department they want, good policing, we have to be dealing with facts and reality. We have to turn the temperature down and figure out what happened and what went wrong and where do we need to improve. And particularly, as the chief, I feel that for the men and women that stayed here. The men and women that stayed here, in my opinion, are heroes. They had every reason in the world to turn their backs and walk away, and they didn't. And we're not going to get the good young people that we want, to rebuild this department unless they feel like they can come here, give their all, and they'll feel like they will be supported. I will hold these cops accountable for sure. I have no problem firing somebody if that's what they deserve. But at the same time, I know day in and day out, the cops here have been up against, the greatest challenges in the country. Other chiefs tell me I have the worst job in policing. I think I have the best job. But I do think, and I think I have the best job because I know these young people that are coming in the door. I see, the sergeant I talked to yesterday that's retiring after 37 years of serving this city, why he stayed here through thick and thin and fought it out. I do believe, that I'm here on purpose. I do believe, in the end, we will be able to rebuild this thing. And I do think the vast majority of the people do not want to return to the chaos that we had here, 2+ years ago.
Chief Brian O'Hara in studio with us. Let's take a break. When we get back, a couple more local cases with Chief O'Hara next. Brian O'Hara in studio with us, and so much to discuss. I'm glad you brought up the mayor, and because he is up for re-election. So do you think the mayor is governing properly, and do you support his re-election?
I mean, for me, the mayor has stood up publicly when it's not convenient. And that's what leadership is. I mean, he could pander, he could jump on the bandwagon if he thinks the pressure is out there to say, oh yeah, to hell with the chief, go back to New Jersey. But he didn't. Just like he didn't when his wife, and his child were, at home, and there was a mob of people that wanted to disband the police department. And he exercised leadership. He stood there and said, no, I'm not for abolishing the police. And he put his body on the line there by himself. So people can say whatever they want about this mayor, but you can't say that he hasn't stood up when it mattered the most. And he stood up for me when it mattered the most as well.
Oh, yeah, with the violence, the continued violence of this homelessness. And it just seems like everybody is like, okay, the problem is drugs. And there's spots for people who want help. Well, so what do we do? I mean, if you could, what would be your first move if they let you do something? Say, okay, this is how we're going to solve this problem.
We got to get these folks off the street. We got to get them somewhere. Third precinct.
Where?
Third precinct, South Minneapolis is bearing the brunt of it, and the community there, all the different neighborhoods, the community there has had enough, and for good reason. I mean, as of now, I think about 1/4, 25% of all shooting victims this year in South Minneapolis have been within 500 feet of a homeless encampment. That's outrageous. I mean, we got all kinds of different problems emerging in South Minneapolis that's different from prior to 2020. Shootings and some violence issues there are more than what they had been in the past. At the same time, we're experiencing reductions in North Minneapolis, which traditionally bore the brunt of all the city's gun violence. North Minneapolis today has had fewer shooting victims year to date this year than in 2019. That's huge. But at the same time, we have these different problems emerging, particularly in South Minneapolis, and so much of it goes hand in hand with these homeless encampments. And we talk about the shootings, the crime that's related to it. Crime shoots up whenever one of these homeless encampments pops up. It goes down once they're removed. And it is not just about the shootings and the violence. I mean, last weekend, 6 people were shot at homeless encampments. 4 of them were murdered. I stood over 2 men that were naked, that were executed, shot in the head at a homeless encampment. And I mean, it's an unbelievable problem that we can't deny. Even when violence isn't happening and, property crime, one of the, hardware stores yesterday had a number of their, the gas containers they use for the grills,
the
propane tanks stolen. We were able to get some of them back from one of the encampments yesterday. But I mean, it's this kind of stuff that neighbors are seeing. They're worried about their kids that walk past this stuff, that see the needles, that have to stand on the corner at the bus stop. It's real. It's obviously it's not a problem we can arrest our way out of, but we can't pretend like this is normal either.
Chief, I want to talk to you more about the violence. In fact, for those who don't know, who haven't heard this latest breaking news, Chief's been up with his team since about 1:30 this morning because a 14-year-old boy is now under arrest after police and PD says he mistakenly shot his 13-year-old friend. Of course, Adam and I were baffled when we heard this, but then we saw the rap sheets of these kids and we were thinking, all right, what 14-year-old and 13-year-old are up at 1:30 in the morning? How do they have a gun? So, Chief, tell us what this story is and how can we possibly work against this?
It's terrible. I mean, I don't know how many scenes I've been at now with kids these young that are getting shot. I was at one a month or 2 ago where we had as many people, under 13 shot in one incident, 4, as what you used to have here in an entire year. That happened in one incident in a stolen car. And just with these kids, the kid that's the shooter, the kid that's the victim, 13 and 14 years old, they're known to us. I mean, we've had them in stolen cars. We've had them reported as missing kids. We've had them involved in robberies. I mean, it's just, they're not known to just us. They're known to the rest of the system as well. And it wasn't just them. Some other kids that were there are very well known to us. So, I mean, again, like the system, we're all failing these kids. I've been saying it for 2 years. And I don't know. I mean, it's just, you wind up, we were talking with the sergeant earlier, you wind up knowing a lot of these names.
But Chief, it's not just the system. Come on, where are these kids' parents?
I mean, a lot of times, there's stories behind what's going on here. One kid, his dad was murdered last year. Mom is doing everything she can, being influenced by older kids on the block. I mean, it is easy to just say it's just the parents and lock the parents up, what have you. I mean, it's not always that simple.
Fair.
Yeah.
I want to, you mentioned off air too about these officers you are recruiting. Let's talk about some good news.
Some
about
positive.
The people who will represent this city as police officers. Talk about that and about how that keeps you, motivated to keep doing the job you're doing.
I try and tell everybody that'll listen. The young people we're getting today are absolutely amazing. We did a welcoming ceremony for community service officers last week at Cristo del Rey High School in South Minneapolis. I mean, they're just incredible. Both, in terms of tradition, we had one young woman who's the 3rd generation now in her family to be a Minneapolis police officer, as well as some others that are sons and daughters of current members. as well as people from communities that have never been represented here before, that come from Africa, South America, Asia. And they all have incredible, incredible stories. I mean, and I just wish the more people could get a chance to know these young people that are coming on and embrace them, the more we're better able to love on them, the more they'll be better able to love, police would love our communities here. And that's why I feel so strongly about trying to support them, and lift them up and hold them through this process, because I know they got the world against them. I listen to some of their stories. Some of them, one young woman, she was in the academy. I didn't know till I had her at a community meeting, brought her up to tell her story. She told everybody, yeah, I'm going to graduate the police academy next week, but I still haven't told my mom I work for Minneapolis because I'm scared. Because, these kids are up against both the perception of the department and then the reality of, violence in the city and their feel for a lot of these kids. And so I think that's why it's just so important that community embraces these young people, because they really do represent the absolute best of what we could possibly ask for in young people. And we just gotta support them.
Beautiful. I'm glad you're getting some of the proofs that you're loving. We only have 1 minute left. You know what I'm going to ask you. We had an extensive discussion about jaywalking yesterday, and Chief, I want it on the record. If somebody, right, but if somebody walks in front of my car in downtown Minneapolis and I hit them because they're crossing against the light, can I get a pass?
Hey, listen, where I come from, jaywalking is everywhere. It's what you're supposed to do. Right. I didn't know, even if no cars are coming, you actually had to wait for the light to change here. That's what everybody here does. Where I'm from, cars are going all over the place. You walk right in front and look the driver right in the eye like, what are you going to do? Yes. I'm walking in front of your car.
I want to be able to at least tap them, kind of teach them a lesson.
You get one. Every in your lifetime, you get one time.
Yeah, one pass.
Thanks so much, Chief, for joining us.
Hopefully, today's a peaceful day in the next few days here.